My guest today has lived a life that almost sounds fictional. He began his career in Hollywood before spending years as the country's top corporate social engineer. Some people would simply call a corporate spy. His work relied less on hacking and computers and more on understanding people and earning trust and the vulnerability of human nature. Today, he's an author, speaker, and writer of RUSE and Malibu Burning. So please enjoy this interview with Robert Kerbeck. So, Mr. Robert, thanks for joining me today. You were basically chasing an acting career, and somehow you ended up being, um, I guess, what's been called one of the world's top corporate spies. And that's really not exactly a normal career path. So, how did that happen?
Uh, well, thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, all actors, and we can take it further and say artists need some sort of survival job to, pay the bills while they're doing their art and trying to, establish some type of career that can actually pay money, which as an artist is a very difficult thing to do. And so when I moved to New York, I didn't know anyone. I just had one friend. No one in my family had ever, been an artist of any shape or form. And so I was kind of on my own and a little bit lost in the breeze. And my buddy one day mentioned that he had some sort of job and he shut up right away. He'd clearly been told not to talk about it. And I said, whoa, what is this job you have? Well, it was very kind of mysterious and strange. And he said, I'm not supposed to talk about it, but, I can try to get you an interview. And so he got me an interview for the job, and I go up to the Upper East Side. And for your listeners that don't know Manhattan, the Upper East Side's kind of old money Manhattan. And I go to the Upper East Side, penthouse apartment, doorman building, and this woman ushers me into the nicest apartment I'd ever seen. I mean, apartment really doesn't do it justice. It was all white, and all I was concerned about was that I was going to ruin her beautiful white carpets, and because I was coming from the subway and I was a guy, and. And this woman has this very strange interview where she never tells me a thing about the job. She really doesn't ask me anything, about myself. I mean, this is so long ago. I think I had a briefcase and a resume, printed out, ready to hand to her. This is, I guess, early '90s, and she, the only thing she's interested in is my relationship with my father, because my father was a car dealer in the Philadelphia area. If you haven't heard the Kerbeck name, look it up. My cousins are still in the business, and they have the largest Maserati, Lamborghini, Ferrari dealerships perhaps in the country. If you're looking for a
Oh,
deal, tell them I sent you. Um,
okay.
and the woman was like, "Well, how did your father take you leaving the car dealership? Your family is well known. My great grandfather sold horse carriages before automobiles were invented. The placard on the building, the Kerbeck dealership building, said since 1899, and here I was walking away from all this." And
Hmm.
it was really kind of a powerful moment because she picked up on something that was very real, was that my father was not supportive of my career as an
Yeah.
actor, and I was really going out on a limb. Um, so I kind of stumbled out of that interview, kind of a little emotional, really not thinking about the job because it seemed like I had blown the interview because she didn't ask me anything about my skill set or, so I figured, wow, she wasn't hiring me. And my buddy called me, I think either that day or the next day, and he said, you got the job, but don't get too excited because no one is able to do this job. And I still had no idea what the job was. And then the next day, I get sent to this woman's apartment in Brooklyn. She's apparently the trainer for this woman, and this attractive young woman opens the door and she says, "Come on in, you'll work in my bedroom." And now the plot thickened because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, am I in like, is this like
Yeah.
is this
Male
pornography?
juggalo.
Yeah, and I was single at the time, so it was fine. Um,
Oh, okay.
and we go into her bedroom, and in the bedroom, she's got a futon on the ground and a desk with a chair. And she says, "Sit down at the desk." So I sit down at the desk, and she proceeds to tell me that what we do is we use our acting skills to get people inside major multi-million dollar, multi-billion dollar corporations to tell us secrets that they should never in a million years tell us. And
Wow.
that was my initiation into the world of corporate spying.
That's amazing. I would have to imagine you'd be pretty nervous at that point, thinking, can I do this? But that's also pretty great that she gave you that opportunity. She must have, believed in you a little bit, I would say, at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think she sensed, you're coming from a background, let's face it, in automobile sales, you're the son of a car
Yeah.
dealer. You're going to have some ability to, let's just say bullshit. And I did. And obviously as an actor, that's, let's face it, that's what actors are doing. I mean,
Right. True.
you're lying for a living. That's what an actor does.
Yeah.
And that's what a corporate spy does. And so this woman began to show me that we would call, and in the beginning, we did go in person to some things and we tried to get information in person. But what we quickly learned was we actually would get far more information out of corporations using the good old fashioned phone call, which,
Sure.
and obviously you found me because of my book, which is called RUSE. And a ruse is a trick, a scam. And so we called these phone calls ruse calls, and hence how I got the title of the book. So we would make these ruse calls and we would pretend to be someone we were not. This woman who was training me, she would do an Irish accent. And she would do this Irish accent. Again, we were actors. And so she would do this Irish accent. It was kind of a slight Irish accent. And it wasn't that good of an accent. As a matter of fact, she would go in and out of it. And I was listening to it, and I'm like, this accent is not very
People
good.
don't know.
Yeah, you're blowing it. But what she would do is she would call people that had Irish names. So she would call John Donahue, or she would call, anyone that had an Irish name. She would call that person, and to my incredible shock, and even today, all these years later, it doesn't make sense that it worked, but it did. And so she would call Irish people. They would hear the Irish accent, and they would be nice to her just because
Oh,
she was Irish. And
that's
so
amazing.
right? It predisposed them to help her, and it predisposed them to release information that they should never release simply because they believed she was Irish.
Yeah, and that's totally subconscious. That's not even something they're thinking about. It's probably clicking in the back of their head somewhere, but not really in their choices that they're making over the phone. I've spent probably the last 15 plus years like doing phone stuff as well, not on that kind of level, but running outbound marketing and all that sort of thing, and generating millions of dollars opportunities. And so your story is really remarkable to me. That's pretty great. When did you know that you were good at it? Like, when did it click for you, like, where you were like, okay, I can do this?
And that's a great question because in the beginning, my buddy in the book, his name is Pax. And in the beginning, the woman who hired us, her name is Leona. Again, all the names are changed from the real names. So in the book, her name is Leona. And Leona hired only women. Leona hired only actresses. And my buddy Pax and I were the first men she hired. She just didn't believe that men could do the job, that men were as good at the spying. And in the beginning, she was right, because the women would use ploys as if they were assistants, right? And
Mm.
back in the day, most assistants, and again, we're going back to the 90s, most assistants were female. And so my buddy Pax and I, we would call up and we would say, "Hey, we're an assistant." And people would be like, "You're an assistant? Who are you an assistant for?" Because we've never had a male assistant call us. And all of a sudden, right away, they were asking questions. And what you don't want is, you want to be the one asking the questions. You don't want to be
Sure.
getting asked
Yeah.
questions, right? And so we were kind of really struggling, and we finally realized, and this is one of the amazing things, is each one of the spies that worked for Leona had a very, very different technique. And we learned that you had to have your own technique. And so what I learned is, all of a sudden one day I said, well, I keep saying I'm an assistant, or I keep saying I'm somebody low down the totem pole, and I'm not getting any information or very little information. I said, why am I not saying I am one of the top people at the firm?
Sure.
Why am I not the senior vice president of legal? Right? Hear
Mm-hmm.
that. Hear that. Oh, I'm sorry. I have the senior vice president of legal on the phone, or I have the executive vice president of compliance, or I have
Mm-hmm.
the chief operating officer, or in other words, all of a sudden
Sure.
I went right up to the top of the food chain. And now you were challenging people to doubt the veracity of a very senior person. So if somebody said, "Well, I can't give you that information," or they're risking making an enemy if you really are the COO, or you really are the head
Sure.
of compliance, right? And
Sure.
one of the things that I was using to my advantage is I was wielding the corporate hierarchy as a cudgel, right? I was basically saying, "Hey, what are you taught in corporate America, right? Be a good teammate. Don't make waves. Certainly if the COO or if a senior vice president needs something, all hands on deck. Do whatever you can. Help them out, right?" And so I quickly learned that people would respond very well to that, and were indeed more than willing to help me. And in some cases, I would call people, and they would say, "Geez, Mr. Jones, I know you're the head of compliance, and I know you're the head of legal. I've seen your name on documents,
Get
blah blah
that
blah.
right.
But I don't know the answer to the question you're asking. I would certainly help you. I just don't know." And so then what I would say is, I'd say, "Oh, that's fine. Who does know? Who would know that information?" And they'd go, "Oh, well, Tina over in blah blah blah. I think she might know that." And I'd say, "Well, you know what? Can you do me a favor? Put me on hold. Call over to Tina and ask her that information, and get that information for me." And so
Mm.
now I've made this individual an unwitting mole to get information for me, because that person's going to call Tina, and Tina knows that person. So there's not going to be any sort of vetting. And so it was a really amazing way of getting people inside corporations to tell you, again, things that they should never ever tell you. And and for your audience, they're going, well, okay, well, what kind of secrets were these, and how are they valuable? Well, when we started out, remember, there was no such thing as LinkedIn, right?
Right.
LinkedIn really didn't click until after the crash of 2008, when everybody lost their job. And all of a sudden, everybody started putting their resume on LinkedIn. And it wasn't until the economy began to recover in about 2010, 2011, that LinkedIn really exploded, right? So LinkedIn
Mm.
has really only been a big thing, for maybe 15 years. But before that, there was no way for really anyone to know who worked at a corporation, what their title was at a corporation, and
Right.
most importantly, who were the top people at corporations, who were the top salespeople, who were the top traders, who were the top bankers, who were the top designers, whatever the thing was.
Yeah.
And many of your people in the audience know this, and many don't know this, but corporations rank employees. There is a ranking system that all corporations have. I mean, sometimes it could be as basic as salary. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's, based on, they have kind of their own algorithm and their own metrics in terms of how they rank people. Um, and we would determine what those rankings were. We would find out what the organizational chart looked like. So who reported, to whom, and how many people were on each team. But then more importantly, we would determine, and the best example is salespeople, right? Let's say there was a sales team, and it could be any type of sales team. They could be selling any type of product. Well, if there, let's just say 20 people on the sales team, every salesperson, most salespeople are going to tell you they're the best salesperson on the team, or they're the second best salesperson on the team. Well, we would get the rankings. We would get the sales production numbers. So we would know exactly who the top people were. And then Leona, who had the firm, was then selling that information to that firm's biggest competitors. And so what would they do? They would go and recruit away the number one or number two or number three salesperson, right? And
Wow.
so you say, well, okay, I can see how that might be a little bit valuable. Well, and I always use the analogy of I'm a big football fan. And when Tom Brady left the New England Patriots and went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a free agent, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won a Super Bowl, right? Um,
Yeah.
right. And so talent, stealing the top salesperson from a rival firm can take
Oh,
that
sure.
firm, right? It's huge. And by the way, a lot of times they wouldn't just take one; they would take the number one and number two, or the number one and number three.
You're not
And
only simultaneously making that company worse, but you're giving yourself an all-star team, basically.
exactly, exactly. And
Mhm.
so that information about who were the top producers was incredibly valuable. And I'm here to tell you that even though today LinkedIn has, most workers, and there's still plenty of people that are either not on LinkedIn, their profile's not up to date because they're killing it
Sure.
where they are. They don't even need to worry about LinkedIn. And LinkedIn doesn't tell you who the rock stars are, who the top producers are. And that information, even today, is incredibly valuable to corporations.
Oh, that's pretty great. What was kind of I don't know what the right way to put this is, but I get what was the biggest secret that you took away
Mm.
with where it was like, Robert, you SOB, great job, and pop some bubbly, and we're
Right.
like, I can't believe you did it.
And again, the answer to this question is going to seem a little esoteric, but remember the crash of 2008, right? The whole
Mhm.
world kind of stopped. I mean, and everyone thought we were going to have a depression. It was, really serious. And the crash was basically, in large part caused by the mortgage crisis, right? Where anybody and
Right.
everybody could get a mortgage, and there were all these fraudulent mortgages, and then the investment banks were packaging these bundles of mortgages, selling them as investment products when the mortgages were essentially worthless because the people that had the mortgages either didn't exist or weren't paying them. And so all of a sudden, these mortgage-backed securities were worthless, and it created this financial crisis. But before that happened, before that happened in 2005 and 2006 and 2007, there were bankers at the largest investment banks who were bundling these soon to be worthless mortgages, and they were making billions of dollars doing it. And there was one team at Morgan Stanley. It was an 8-person team. And in the prior year, they had made Morgan Stanley $1 billion trading these products. And my client wanted to know who was on this 8-person team, right? Now, you would think, well, that's got to be pretty easy to do, find these 8 people. Well, corporations are very smart. They did not have these 8 people listed in the Morgan Stanley directory.
Mm.
They were not listed. They were basically taken out. They were removed because
Yeah.
Morgan Stanley knew how much money they were making, and they knew how hard other firms were coming to try to get these people and steal them, right?
Yeah.
And so what we had to do is we had to figure out, because we knew they were there, right? We knew they were there. We had to figure out where they were. And so what we learned, and again, this is going back in time, there was mail, right? There was
Hmm.
mail. And so we learned, from the mailroom, from people in the mailroom, we learned how each floor was set up, how each floor, on the left side, there were 6 offices, and that had a number of, D247, and that was the structured finance department. And then we learned down that there were 6, and all of a sudden we came to the one area where there was no corresponding, we got the mail stop number, that's what it's called, but the names for that department were not listed. Like the people were not assigned, and so there were no names connected to the mail stop. So right away we knew that's where these people were seated, right? That's where they were. So now, okay, now we know what floor they're on. Now we know where they're sitting, but now we have to figure out how do we get names for that mail stop. So then we had to go to the Human Resources Department, which is HR, also known as Human Roadblock. Incredibly difficult to get information out of HR, right? So what we have to pretend is that there's a glitch, right? Because human resources is never going to give you information unless there's some. So there's a glitch, and people are not getting their mail, and the people that are not getting their mail are in mail stop 6241. It's not a lot of people. I think it's only 8 people that are in that department that are not getting their mail. Can you do a search and pull up the 8 names that have that mail stop? Nobody's thinking about billions of dollars. They're just thinking about people not getting their
Yeah.
mail.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so that's how we had to get that information, and then my client at the time recruited away, I think, 2 of those people. And so, maybe your listeners are going, well, geez, well, how much was that worth to your client? Well, some portion of $1 billion.
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, it's really true. You don't get what you don't ask for, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, get what you don't ask for. And that's kind of, at least, through my experience, that was always the major hurdle for people is just, getting the gonads to just ask that question they're afraid to ask. And once they do, it's not so bad. And
No.
you can just go out there and ask all sorts of stuff. And, that's pretty amazing. What do you think the biggest misconception is about corporate espionage? I feel like maybe people imagine gizmos and gadgets and hacking and all that, but it's really, is it just people talking,
It's the
human?
weak. Yeah, that's a fantastic question. The weakest link is always the human being.
Yeah.
And corporations have done a pretty darn good job with firewalls and encryption and authentication, verification. All of the things that corporations do to keep their data safe, your data safe, my data safe. But at the end of the day, if I can call up and get someone on the phone, I always say, give me 45 minutes to an hour, and I can pretty much find out anything that I want to find out. And as an example of that, recently, it was about a year and a half, 2 years ago, the casino MGM was hacked, and MGM was hacked, and elevators didn't work. The casino was shut down. People couldn't get their room cards wouldn't work because everything is now on the digital grid,
Hmm.
and they were basically being held at ransom. They were going to have to, pay off, whoever had hacked them, millions and millions and millions of dollars, whatever the amount was in cryptocurrency. And that hack started with someone calling a low-level MGM customer service rep and getting
Wow.
information that then the hackers used to penetrate the system.
Wow.
Right? It started with a basic social engineering, or what I call a ruse phone call.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you're making the case for people to just get rid of their phones, I gotta say, but I don't want them to do that or I'll be out of a job, so
Well,
do you think
you
it's
know,
more psychology or deception?
it's both. It's 50-50. But what I do think is
Yeah,
that um, corporations need to do a much better job of training their employees. And
sure.
the best example of that was Steve Jobs and Apple, because Steve Jobs, what he said to his employees is, forget about losing your job if you release information that you shouldn't release. Forget about it. You're going to lose your job. But more than that, if you release information that you should not release, that we've told you not to release, we're going to sue you. We're going to
Mm,
come after you. And so he really put the fear of God into his employees. And Apple has by far the best secrecy of any corporation that I've come across. I mean, we were asked to penetrate Apple many times, and I'm here to tell you it was quite a challenge. It was quite a challenge.
yeah. Do you think we're easier to manipulate today than we were 20 years ago?
I think it's the same. Yeah, I
Same,
think
huh?
it's yeah. I don't think it's any better. Any, you know, I mean, there is so much deception. There's so much fraud going on. I mean, you can make an argument there's more deception and more fraud going on today
Sure.
than there was 20 years ago, because there's so much information that we all put out into the world when we're doing our
Mhm.
posting. When companies that have our data don't protect it, so that there's so much information that people can find out about you, they can find out about me, that they could then utilize or attempt to utilize to contact us or pretend they are us. So yeah, it's frightening, and I don't have any
Yeah.
answers. I don't have any answers for that per se. I can only tell you that in terms of corporate spying, it's alive and well because corporations don't spend time and money training the most vulnerable people in the organization, who are generally
Right.
younger people, people that are new in the organization. I mean, that's what we would always look for. We'd look for someone that was 3 months with the company, because
Yeah.
3 months with a company, 6 months with a company, you know how to work the system, you know how to move around in the organization, you know a little bit, but
Totally.
you're also still don't want to rock the boat. So all of a sudden you feel like you've got the senior vice president of compliance on the phone.
You don't wanna piss him off.
You don't
Yeah, you just started.
you just started. Yeah. And so you're going to be a good foot soldier, and you're going to help and release information and do whatever that person asks you to do.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Are you harder to fool yourself after doing that for so long?
You would think so, but I had a situation recently where I received an email. It's a pretty common scam now. I don't know what I feel like if you're going to do this stuff, right? If you're going to, lie to people and try to trick people, or come up with some sort of ruse, you ought to make some money at it, and
Sure.
this person reached out to me, as if they were a sort of well-known writer. Obviously, I'm a writer, and
Mhm.
we developed this kind of back and forth, and this person is sort of a well-known writer, but not like super famous. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that they read my stuff and hey, I like your stuff, da da da, and
Sure.
But I was flattered, because you're always playing to someone's ego, and they weren't asking for anything. If they'd been asking for anything, of course I would have reacted. But this is the beauty of it, is that
Mhm.
they were, by not asking for anything, they were reeling me in, reeling me in, reeling me in, reeling me in, and then at a certain spot, they started to, they were trying to, say, hey, I don't know if you need any help in your, marketing of your, your books or yourself as a brand, as an author, but I use this person and they were really fantastic, And at the time, I thought, oh, well, that's nice that this, more well-known author than myself is offering me, this tip and this person, um, but what was fascinating is, first of all, it took a lot of time, and and then at a certain point, it really wasn't a whole lot, so they were pretending to be this person that they were not, to try to get me
Mhm.
to use their services. And at one point, I'm like, if you're going to do something fraudulent and you're going to pretend you're somebody you're not, you should make some money at it. Like, you're not going to make any money. It's like you went through spending like weeks on this thing, months on this thing for what, you know? And I sent that email at one point to this person, which was pretty funny. And then they kept denying that they were pretending to do the person. And then one time they accidentally emailed me from their own personal email account rather than the fictitious author account. So they completely busted themselves, and I was able to say, look, here's a tutorial on all the things you did wrong in this scenario, from a corporate spy. Next time you're going to have to do a little bit better.
See, I
But,
think that would be your story would be great for a film.
yeah, I mean,
That'd
look,
be a great film.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's in the mix. The way it works in Hollywood is things get optioned, and
Mhm.
RUSE has been optioned. It's on its third option, which is both good and bad, because obviously it shows there's a lot of interest in it, but it would have been nice if
Mhm.
it happened already. But sometimes shows take, the best example is what was it, The Irishman with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, right? The Irishman film was a book called They Paint Houses. Um,
Mhm.
I think that was the title of it. And that book, I think from the release of that book to the release of The Irishman, I think was over 20 years. I think it might
Wow.
have been, 20, 25 years. So I hope it's not going to take that long. We're only, I think, 4 years since my book was
Yeah.
out, but it takes time.
No, you actually went through just to kind of switch gears here a little bit. You actually had quite the experience with it was the Woosley fire, right? Correct?
Yes, the
And you were
Woolsey Five.
yeah, and you went through all that. I'm wondering what your take is on the fires that happened not too long ago in the Palisades and all that. And what
Yeah,
are some? Do you see any similarities? And did people didn't learn from previous experience? You know?
yeah. I mean, I'd like to say don't get me started, but the whole purpose of being on a show
Yeah,
like this is to
sure.
put information out there that people, first off, I hope find interesting, but also that maybe can help some people. And I'm here
Definitely.
to tell you, there were a lot of things that went wrong in the 2018 Woolsey fire, and there were a lot of similar things that went wrong in the 2025 Palisades fire. However, at the end of the day, the number one thing that can not prevent wildfires but mitigate the damage from wildfires, the number one thing is homeowners. It's not more Firehawk helicopters. It's not bigger reservoirs. It's not more firefighters. It's not, and all of those things would be great and would be helpful. But the number one thing is homeowners, because most homeowners have no idea that they first off live in a fire zone. They live in a wildfire area.
Right.
And as an example, after the Palisades fire, I took my doctor up to his home. I have a press pass so I could get through the police lines. And I took my doctor up to his home because he had evacuated like everybody else with the shirt on his back. And he had medicines and things in there that he wanted to get out because they were going to go bad. So I took him up there and to get his medicines and, some other things that he needed. And I was walking around his property. His house survived. It was one of the only ones in his neighborhood that
Well,
survived. Like every house was gone except for his and maybe one or two others. It was a miracle, right? And I'm walking around his house, and he has his lawn cushions on his lawn furniture all outside.
hmm,
And you know, one of the things is when your home burns, sometimes the home burns because a wall of fire hits it, but that is very rare. What usually happens is an ember lands on something,
Right.
or an ember gets inside your house and
Hmm.
your house burns because this ember lands on a lawn cushion, on a chaise lounge, and it lights the because the cushions are flammable. People don't think about that, but there are all of these things around your house that are flammable. Your welcome mat is usually flammable, right? All of these things that people don't think about, even though they live in a fire zone. And one of the
Right.
things that is really become a big thing is creating this buffer zone around your house where there is nothing flammable within, they say, a minimum of 5 feet. I think it should be 15 feet. But
Sure.
there's nothing flammable near your house. There's no wood pile. There's no brush. There's no flammable, and obviously people still want to put out a mat and they still want to have cushions. But then when that fire is coming, all of those things need to go inside the house.
Definitely.
Um, right? So that you want to give your home a fighting chance. And so, my doctor, his home just survived by pure luck, right? And that
Mm.
happens, but if you do all the things little things like roll up towels, wet towels, and put them under your door frame so that embers can't get in under the door frames because the
Mm.
winds in these fires are so strong, they're blowing embers, and those embers are finding a way to get into your house. You need
Yeah.
to install ember resistant vents, right, which are really inexpensive. Most people don't have them. So all
Yeah.
of these little things, if homeowners did these things, it would really harden homes. And if my home is hardened, it's much less likely to burn. And if you're my next door neighbor and my home doesn't burn, your home is less likely to burn. Whereas if
Right.
my home catches on fire, the ambient heat from my home is going to burn your home down, even if you did everything right. So we're
Right.
really in this together. And I think that's the thing that I always try to say is the homeowners need to be much more aware that they live in a fire zone, and to do more things to harden their homes and make it harder for their home to burn down.
Yeah. It's just so sad seeing it happen, kind of all over again. And there's fires. I feel like there's a lot more fires these days than I'm used to seeing. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, there
it's
there are.
it's
Yeah,
brutal.
yeah, there are, and
I mean, even here, where I am in Wisconsin, like we've been smoked out from the fires in Canada,
mhm.
and I don't ever remember that being a thing growing up.
No,
You know,
not at all, not
and
at all.
to
And
where the sun is hazy, you can barely breathe, like that far away.
yeah, and one of the
It's
most
wild.
one of the most toxic things on the planet is breathing the smoke from a wildfire, because you are inhaling. Um, in the case of like the Palisades fire, the Woolsey fire, you're inhaling. The melted Tesla batteries. You're
Yeah,
inhaling the melted paint that was in someone's garage that has now been aerosolized into the atmosphere. Right? You're breathing all of
yeah,
these incredibly toxic things. So,
yeah,
wildfires it's a serious environmental issue, as well as obviously an emotional issue when you lose your home.
yeah.
Even though maybe you have insurance, I'm here to tell you most people are underinsured. Um,
I can
um,
imagine. And to
yeah,
be fully insured in an area like that would be like a fortune, I would
that's
imagine.
right. That's right. So most people are underinsured. And then the other thing is that, when you lose your home, you lose everything you ever had, so you lose
Yeah,
everything your kids had, your grandparents had, your great grandparents had, the military uniform from World War I that your great grandfather fought, whatever it is that was so valuable to you and your family, it's all gone.
yeah,
So I mean, I do talk a lot about wildfires, because it's not, it's a difficult subject, but I do strongly feel that we can do a lot more to mitigate the damage. And I really hope moving forward that homeowners hear a program like this and take one or two steps to do that and make their home a little bit safer.
yeah. You got to put in the effort sometimes, and it's worth. It seems like it'd be worth it. It's such a beautiful area, you know, to stick around and just take some precautions. That would be great. So, and everything that you've done from writing to being an author to acting to the corporate spy, um, y- I guess what's your biggest takeaway if you were to give advice to somebody, maybe growing up, hitting 20 years old or something? What would you tell them?
That's a great question. I just had my nephew visiting me, and he's in his early 20s, and he's got a girlfriend. She's obviously in her early 20s also, and they're just doing great. And look, I I bounced around a lot, and I did a lot of things. I've had a lot of different careers, and it's been exciting, and I don't regret any of it. However, I think if you can pick something that you love at an early age and stick with it, it might not seem like, you're having the success that you want to have when you're 23 or 27 or 28 or even 32. But I'm here to tell you, 20 years down the road of doing the same thing, and and of course, the caveat that it's something that you care about and you're passionate about and you're working, hard to do. But down the road, man, you are going to find that you have really done well, and you're going to have a great career. You're going to have great relationships, because you stuck with something. Um, so that's what I have to say. Now, for me, I don't know what it is, if I got bored with things, or you know, but I've just moved around and done a lot of different things. Which the expression "variety is the spice of life." I really believe that. But I can tell you, if you want to get far down the road, finding what you love early on and kind of going with that is invaluable.
Yeah, great advice. I mean, it's something I wish I'd known at 20, but then again, even if somebody told me that, I don't know if I would have listened anyway. So I was
Yeah.
selling Porsches at 20 years old.
Oh, there you go. Wow. I wish I'd known you then. I
Yeah.
wish I'd known you then.
Yeah, then, barista, a musician, all sorts of stuff. Yeah. Um, we were emailing back and forth, and I don't want to forget this part, and discuss this. We were emailing back and forth, and a little bit of my history with podcasting is talking to people in the UFO land. I did that about
Mm.
3 years ago or so, and I talked to so many people about it, because I had saw something, I had no idea what it was, but that kind of just sparked my curiosity, and I was able to conduct so many interviews. So, and then I stopped the podcast to focus on real life for a bit, but coming back, I wanted to, have a little bit more variety going on, and touch more aspects of human life. And I found you, and we were emailing back and forth, and it was kind of funny because he said maybe we could talk about the flying saucer in my backyard. I saw him in Malibu.
Yeah.
Not kidding. So I totally want to hear this story if
Yeah,
you're so willing to tell it.
yeah, it's interesting because this happened, I'm going to say it was 2014,
Oh
so about
wow.
12 years ago. And
Mhm.
when it happened, I would tell people about this, story, and people were very suspicious, would be the nice way of saying it.
Sure. Yeah.
Skeptical would be the nice way of saying it. They were actually quite dismissive. And the first question always would be, how much did you have to drink that night? Or, what drugs were you on? Or. And so I stopped telling the story for a long time because it wasn't very much fun, because people would kind of put you down and not take it seriously. So I stopped telling the story. And it's only been in the last few years when now there's been a lot more press. All of a sudden, information is coming out. The government is actually releasing information. We're seeing pilots in some of the videos where these highly trained pilots are seeing objects, and they're like, we have no idea what this is, because. And there's some really good books. There's a book called Imminent that has come out that is fantastic
Yeah.
about. Um, so so my story, and again, I would have been like, if you had asked me pre 2014, did I believe in UFOs and aliens? My take on it would have been, well, how could we be the only people in the universe, or how could we be the only intelligent life forms in the universe? It just logically didn't make sense to me. But did I think
Yeah.
that there were aliens flying around?
A whole nother thing.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So one night, so I live in Malibu and I live above Zuma Beach. And for your audiences, Zuma Beach is a long, sandy beach, beautiful beach. And I'm about half a mile away from Zuma Beach, kind of up the hill, going up towards the mountains. And I have a 2-story home, and the second story in our master bedroom, we have a balcony. Balcony has a door, and I often, if not always, have that door cracked open because I love the ocean breeze coming off of Zuma Beach.
Mhm.
And I didn't know this at the time. I guess I didn't put it together, but I had seen the movie The Abyss, and I don't know if you remember The Abyss is a James
Sure. Oh,
Cameron
yeah.
movie. And at the end of The Abyss, this spaceship comes up from the bottom of the ocean, and apparently that's where the aliens are, down there. And I didn't know at the time, but that is based on there is a belief that there is an alien base in the deep water trench that exists off of Malibu, and
Mhm.
that we don't have the technology to, identify them, and of course they have the technology to hide down there, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And again, I'm just giving this for context for your audience. So I'm in my house. It is, the sun has set, but it's still, plenty of light. It's, dusk is coming, but it's still, and I see a red light over Zuma Beach, half a mile away over the ocean. I see this red light. And I look out there all the time because I love the breeze. I love the smell,
Sure.
and I say, wow, what is that light? That is a very unusual. And in the moment that I see the light and I have that thought, that light is in my backyard, hovering at my eye level, and it is a flying saucer.
Wow. Like legit how you think of a flying saucer look? Like
Exactly the same as every 1950s movie.
what?
And
Wow.
now I know the reason that the flying saucers look the way they look in the 1950s movie is because that's
Mhm.
exactly what they look like. So it's
Wow.
at my eye level, cockpit, red lights around the cockpit, silver flying saucer, um, and
No way.
and friends of mine that are like engineers and scientists, they ask me a lot of good questions. And one of the questions they asked is, they said, "Was there any sound?" There was no
Mhm.
sound.
Let me guess, none. Yeah.
They asked if there was any disturbance, like from engines, like leaves blowing or dirt blowing. None. Like
Mhm.
it was there instantaneously, like
Wow.
snap of the fingers. And and of course, I'm aware that it is seeing me because it saw me see the light over the ocean, right? And I'm standing in the doorway. I'm looking at the flying saucer. The other question people ask me is how big, and would it have been big enough for like for human beings? And the answer is no. Like,
Hmm.
in my humble opinion, if there were creatures inside that, they were smaller than us. Because it looked like would have been a stretch, like, for
Yeah.
someone my size, 6 feet tall, to be, walking around in that thing, or but it was very wide, and it was, maybe 30 feet, wide. Um,
Wow.
so my wife was downstairs, and she was watching TV, and so her name is Guardia, and so I went, Guardia, Guardia, Guardia. I'm trying to get her attention, and she's watching her favorite show, and she says, "What? I'm watching Downton Abbey." Um, she was very displeased that I was bothering her while she was watching her favorite show, because she, I'm sure, thought like the sink was leaking, or I don't know what.
Mhm.
But she was very annoyed, and so she was kind of, her tone of voice was not very positive. And I swear to God, I think it scared the aliens, or they all of a sudden realized I wasn't alone, whatever, and the spaceship took off as quickly as it came and was gone, right
Wow.
back out over the ocean.
Wow. That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even know how to feel if I saw that. Did that change anything in a dramatic way for you? Did you start to look at things differently yourself? What it means to be human, where your place in the universe? Like, where did you go after that? You know?
You know, it's funny because it didn't really change my attitude because, like I said, I always thought logically it doesn't make any sense that we're the only
Sure.
intelligent life form in the universe. So it just kind of made me go, okay, yeah, now I know for a fact that aliens exist and they're here. Of course, the questions that people ask, my wife asked, is well, why did they fly up to me, and
Mhm.
what were their
Sure.
intentions? Because obviously it saw me see it and came for some reason. Now, what was that reason? Was that reason to, I don't know,
Yeah.
until the craft or the people in the craft realized I wasn't alone and heard my wife's voice and heard her sound kind of threatening. Uh, you
She's
know,
watching Downtown Abbey. Let's get out of here, boys.
yeah, like yeah, we don't want to mess with that. So yeah, so
Well,
you know, um,
well,
but
thanks for telling that, man.
sure, sure. No, I appreciate you listening. And like I said, I feel better telling the story now that there's been so much press and books like Imminent, because I think the idea is the government now is drip, drip, dripping information about the existence of aliens so that people
Yeah.
are prepared and so that we all don't freak out when all of a sudden it's accepted or it's acknowledged or we see spaceships flying around, and it's
Yeah.
just because I guess that's the big fear, is that people aren't going to be able to handle it, and it's going to cause people to do things, hurt people, kill people, rob, whatever. I don't know.
Eh, well, that's what they say, but you just take it from your story. I've had a kind of experience. I didn't see a craft, but my experience was pretty intense where it's like, why me or whatever?
Mm,
What's the deal? Um, you still got to pay your electric bill. You still got to go to work. You still got to eat. So,
yeah,
um, and people find we're a resilient bunch, the human race. We really are. So yeah, the Imminent's a great book. I've had the pleasure of interviewing Lou
mm,
Elizondo
yeah,
multiple times when I have my show, and still I can text him once in a while, and he's super nice. Um, and yeah, it's pretty great. He went on CNN. Maybe it was so that first story was in the New York Times a while back, and he had something to do with that. The videos that came out, I don't know if you've seen those. Like
yeah,
it's called like Gimbal and all that stuff. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I still don't know. I have no idea what's going on. After everybody I've interviewed and everything, I have no clue. But I'm here for the ride. So,
yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, no,
but
it's beyond, like, again, it's beyond us. Like, why did that ship come into my backyard? What was the
yeah,
purpose?
no
I have
clue.
no idea. Yeah, I'm just glad that you know,
And I've read stories about like actual government stuff from the old days, military people seeing, a thing with the red in the middle. I don't know if it was in the middle, but
yeah,
like a saucer shaped thing. So
yeah,
it's like you get enough of those together and something's happening.
yeah, yeah.
That's for sure. Well, hey, I appreciate you doing this interview, man. It was a real pleasure meeting you too.
Oh well,
So
thank you, and anything I can do anytime, let me know.